This chapter covers the next 3 months, and Toriko's recovery hits a couple of snags and gets pretty scary, but Komatsu looks like he's on the verge of the century soup. Toriko, Gourmet number 97, Miracle Solution. Well, hello my brothers and sisters and fellow food enthusiasts of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and appetizingly, just mouth-wateringly good tale of Toriko. Now, our last chapter kind of saw us with sort of, I guess you would call it the chapter was really like a 3-month montage, because it went back and forth between Komatsu and his attempt at creating the century soup and the progress he was making, or lack of, as far as what he was thinking in his mind. And ultimately, at the end, for his portion, at the end of the chapter, he, had come upon and went to see Granny Setsuno, and she was kind of like, hey, glad to see you. I knew you would come, sort of thing. And then the other portion of the chapter was Toriko and him, over that first 3 months, really just going through some of the initial stages of trying to regrow this arm with the help of the regeneration seed provided by Yusaku. So that's where the chapter left off, though, obviously with, with Granny, kind of welcoming Komatsu with open arms. And that's where it picks up. Komatsu comes to her with what he has, and he says, listen, could you please try this and kind of give me your thoughts on it, Sometimes when you get embroiled in something that you're just trying to do, and you're trying to, if it's, maybe it's a speech you're trying to write or a project you're working on for school or something like that, sometimes you get so singularly focused on it, and it even happens with me with these videos and things like that. Sometimes you just got to take a step back. You got to take a step back, you got to talk to somebody else, you got to kind of recenter yourself, and I think for him, this is his opportunity to, just to kind of recenter himself, and ultimately he has that respect for Granny Setsuno because of what she's done. So he winds up going and talking to her, and he's like really concerned and this and that, and she's amazed. She doesn't kind of come out with it to him outwardly, but she's amazed at how far he's gotten in just the 3 months. But he says, he goes, how long did it take you to create the century soup that you have? Which obviously we know isn't an exact copy. It's still missing something. It's still missing that one ingredient, but it's there, right? It's just about there. And she goes, 30 years. And he's like, oh, really? What? 30 years? What the hell? How many lifetimes would it take me to create that? Because he's thinking in his mind that he's so much lower level chef-wise than Granny Setsuno, right? So anyway, she winds up giving him some advice and sending him on his way, and we find out from her that she believes that his rapid progress towards creating the century soup was because of the journey that she sent him on to Ice Hell with Toriko and what he experienced there and everything else. Because for her to get to this point where he's at right now, she said it took her 10 years. And we know Granny's next level, right? So it's one of those things where you can see that, for number one, Komatsu is a sleeping giant as far as his abilities, his cooking abilities as a chef, in my opinion anyway. That's what I see this character as. And number two, we realize that our experiences many times are what winds up pushing us, motivating us, or shaping us in several different ways, shapes, or forms. Many people, when they're a kid, they want to be this, they want to be that. As they grow older, they wind up finding out that their true calling is whatever it may be. But it's usually because of an event that happens in their life. They find out that they're extremely good at something, or that people receive them very well for this or that, or whatever the case may be. So very cool stuff, and very neat to see Komatsu with that. So he goes back to the drawing board, and then we go to the kind of darker part of the chapter with Toriko. Toriko is sitting there, and we wind up finding out from him talking with Teppei that Teppei we find a little bit about his history, which I thought was important. He says, why did you wind up becoming a gourmet reviver when obviously you're related to Knocking Master Jiro, And he goes, so Teppei finally comes out with it, and he says, listen, I followed him around and was his shadow when I was a kid. I just wanted to do everything he did and see everything he did. But here's the deal. He was drunk most of the time, right? And basically what I wound up going and finding out was that there's many different foods and animals and things like that, and ingredients that have become extinct, right? And when he decided he wanted to become a gourmet reviver, it wasn't cool. It wasn't popular. There wasn't gourmet revivers. But he decided at a point his calling was, and that's very much what I find this chapter to be, people finding what they were good at and what their calling was, right? Komatsu, ultimately his calling is to just create this wonderful century soup and just different types of dishes and things like that. Teppei's calling, he found out when he was very young, was to be a gourmet reviver and to help bring things back that Jiro had obviously knocked out when he was drunk, or just in general to go and bring things back from the brink of or extinction itself. We also find out that the regeneration seed that Yusaku has used for Toriko is an amalgamation. It's a hybrid It's something that was partially created in a lab, right? So it's not something that's just grown in nature and what have you. And we find out as the chapter progresses that there's some serious side effects of that. So anyway, Yusaku winds up going and hitting Toriko with these... Toriko starts coughing up some blood is what winds up happening. But he winds up saying that, hey, listen, this is kind of just the next part of the process. He's healing so rapidly, and his gourmet cells are just... No matter what he eats, he can't feel full. It just all goes... The nutrients just all go to his arm, right? And he's regenerating, his arm at a rapid rate. And so over this next 3-month period, because at the end it's 6 months have passed, this kind of montage of things we see now, this is the hard part that he's going through, the difficult part. Eating was the easy part. Now he's got, Yusaku brings in a bunch of these healing bees, these capture level 23, like therapeutic medicine bees or whatever. And these things supposedly will help to ease some of the pains that he has. But we end up finding out that he goes, a lot of this depends on you, Toriko. If you doubt for 1 second that you're going to be okay and that you're going to be healed, you'll fucking die. You'll be done. That's it, right? So Toriko goes and he's coughing up blood and everything else. And he's like, I'm not going to die now, And we know that Toriko is he's driven, but we also know he's a stubborn bastard. And that's probably really good to have those qualities and traits, And obviously one of those people that when he puts his mind to something, he does it, And again, there's so many people nowadays that, it's just everything's a passing fancy. Oh, I really like this. I want to become this. And then as soon as they find out that that road's a little too hard or that mountain's a little too hard to climb, I'll move on to the next thing, Whereas, Toriko, I like it because he sets his sights on something and he does it. He says he's going to do something, he does it, right? And that's very much how I aim to be. I'm certainly no worldly scholar, and I'm certainly not the best of anything in the world, but I always try to set my mind on something and then actually go and follow through with and do it. So, and hey, to each his own. Some people are not like that. That's just something that I've kind of worked on and developed over the years, and it's something that I see in Toriko and kind of feel like a kindred spirit in that sense to this fictional character. And it's one of the things that I like about him, is that he says he's going to do something, he does it. Anyway, again, getting off on a tangent. We got to get back, refocus, and center on the chapter over here. But really, Toriko, at the end of the chapter, and this is the chapter that ends off the volume as well, for his portion of it, because again, it kind of goes back and forth a couple of times here. Toriko is in a bad way, man. I mean, he's convulsing. There's one point where it's like, man, we can't... Yusaku's like, I don't have enough medicine bees, this and that. Sunny walks in with a huge bag of them last minute, hope this is, hope this will be enough, And we see that Toriko is basically on the brink. He's on the brink of death and has been, it looks like, for this second portion, the second leg of the journey, And it's really the race to see who can if either Toriko can recover his arm first or Komatsu can create the century soup. The cool thing that I like, and again, it was only from a chapter or two ago, but I like when I actually go, because I don't read ahead, I like when I go and I kind of predict something that comes true. I felt like for some reason that cute little penguin that he brought back with him, that little wall penguin, that he had something to do with the century soup. And Komatsu's over here towards the end of the chapter, and he's finally gotten up to the point where he's created what Granny has, right? The kind of imitation century soup, the imitation crab meat, if you will, right? The real thing's better, but the imitation stuff, it's okay, I guess, if you mix it in with the right other ingredients. So that's kind of what I compare it to. So he's come up with that, but he feels like he's run into a wall and he's never going to find that other ingredient. So he's really frustrated. He's got bags under his eyes, probably hasn't slept in days or weeks, and his little friend just says, yum. The penguin that walks in or kind of waddles in, and he's like, man, I'm really sorry. I've been ignoring you and this and that, He goes, but I just been so worked up and, so involved in this, so focused, right, on the century soup. And he says, here, do you want to try some, right? And the little penguin at the end of the chapter, he's, oh, yum, 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 yum. He goes, okay, so he's going to come over and he's going to taste some. As the penguin goes over the dish of the century soup, and I love this, as the penguin goes over, you see this nice shot of a little drool, little drool come from the penguin's mouth. And then a little drool drop down, plop, into the soup, right? And all of a sudden, Komatsu's eyes get all big and the penguin's sitting over there because now that aura that we know comes off the century soup that was coming from where it was located in the gourmet showcase in Ice Hell is now right there. So what a way to end off the volume, because then I'm like, oh man. And then we get the to be continued over here bullshit. Luckily, I have the next, 7 or 8 volumes that are out. But anyway, the point being, I guess, would be that that's how the chapter and the actual volume end off as well, which I thought was really cool. So we know that Komatsu is right there. He's on the brink. He's on the brink. He's got the century soup, or at least we hope he does. That's what we presume. So that's how the chapter leaves off. And my chapter question for you, brothers and sisters, is really, I think it's going to pertain to, what I was talking about earlier and what I think the focus of this chapter was, which was really people finding their calling and finding within themselves what it is that they feel they're going to be best to do. And I would like to know in the comments down below what it is that you would like to do, brothers and sisters. Maybe you're already in a career or have a hobby that you really enjoy, but I'd like to hear about it. Maybe you're going to school for it right now. If you're going to school to become an electrical an engineer, or and really anything. I mean, it just depends. What do you feel? Or are you still undecided? Are you still at that point in your life where you're like, yeah, I kind of like this, I kind of like that, but I don't know what I want to do. Or if you're already in your career and your dream job, share that as well. But let me know what it is that you would like to do, what you feel like at this point may be your calling in life, and let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We look forward to catching all of you in the next Fun Nation. Please remember to subscribe to my other channels and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram too.